Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Wyoming, Congresswoman Harriet Hageman.
I bring you greetings from the great state of Wyoming, home of an abundance of affordable and reliable energy, wildlife galore, wide open spaces, gorgeous rivers and streams, magnificent mountains, beautiful blue skies, and not one Liz Cheney anywhere to be found. In 2024, Wyoming provided President Trump with his largest margin of victory of any state in the nation, and we are so proud of the job that he is doing. We are ecstatic that he is exposing and eradicating the massive government waste, fraud, and abuse that we have known for decades has been happening, and yet no one before would do anything about it. We are overjoyed that he has tasked Elon Musk and his team with overseeing DOGE, using their skills to implement what may be the closest thing to zero-based budgeting that we will ever see in the federal government. We are thrilled that he recognizes that we are a government of, by, and for the people, and that its primary purpose is to protect the homeland and secure our God-given rights and freedoms. It is quite apparent that the Democrats long ago stopped caring about the concerns of working-class people, the truck drivers, farmers, airline employees, miners, custodians, and construction workers, among others. And they paid for such neglect by being shellacked in the last election. But far be it for them to undertake a legitimate self-assessment of their policies and ideas. They are instead engaging in kabuki theater while standing in front of government agencies, screaming their opposition to everything good and just generally making fools of themselves. The agencies that they have chosen for their performance art are telling, are they not? The Department of Education, a $270 billion woke monstrosity that has presided over the steady and unrelenting decline of public education. And USAID, a $50 billion anti-American purveyor of ideology so toxic that even the bureaucrats who work there knew they had to hide their programs so that they could continue to fund such things as transgender comic books in Peru, so-called sex change operations in Guatemala, and anti-Israeli rappers. By now, everyone has heard about the crazy things USAID and other bloated and unnecessary bureaucracies have spent our money on, and we are rightly infuriated. But there is more to this story than bureaucrats and leftists attempting to out-crazy each other, and it is critical that we understand the full picture, in part to ensure accountability, but to also understand how these actions, this overwhelming misdirection of assets, this radical anti-humanist agenda has weakened us here at home and allowed our so-called political leaders to ignore their primary responsibility to our citizens. In short, this obsession with pushing the woke agenda has real-world consequences and has caused real-life suffering. The way that I often describe it is that a government that does things that it should not be doing becomes incapable of doing those things that it should. What we can describe as the social and economic reality of opportunity costs. And it is this phenomena that I, as the chairwoman of the House Anti-Woke Caucus, want to make sure people understand. We are not just dealing with stupid comic books and radical anti-American leftist policies. We are also dealing with an obsession that has become so all-consuming to those on the other side that the toll in human suffering and property destruction cannot be ignored. As a devastating example, let's look at the recent California wildfires. The cause and magnitude of those fires cannot be written off as an act of nature, because that is not what happened. Rather, a substantial number of fires in California are started by arsonists and homeless encampments, and that appears to be the case in terms of this recent conflagration. Even setting aside the cause of the fires, however, this catastrophe was years in the making, with resource management, overregulation, and failed water policies all finding their roots in a fixation on climate change and global warming. Ah, yes, with Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass deciding that the threat of a 1 to 2 degree change in temperatures 100 years from now warrants whatever suffering we may come about today. Let's start with the radical environmentalist decisions for the last several decades to fight every effort to undertake proper, effective, and safe forest and range management practices and to implement better fire protection policies. In fact, one such organization fought to block a wildfire prevention project near the Pacific Palisades to protect a shrub called the Broughton's milkvetch. We can thank this group for their efforts to protect this shrub, although such protections were clearly only transitory, since they also burned in the November fires. But this is not an isolated situation, and we have watched it play out year after year in Western states, as the so-called experts and environmentalists would rather our forests, our prairies, and our homes burn to the ground than allow us to implement common sense and much-needed treatment techniques to prevent these catastrophes from happening in the first place. Did you know that in 2020, Gavin Newsom vetoed a fire mitigation bill that had been passed by both houses of the Democrat-controlled California legislature? That bill provided funding for vegetation management to maintain defensible space around structures, reduce flammable material, reduce fire risk, and harden evacuation routes. In his veto message, Governor Newsom exposed his moral corruption by stating that any efforts to fireproof California could not take precedence over his plan to replace single-family homes with affordable housing and multifamily units. I could spend hours regaling you with the many ways in which radical environmentalism and the fear-mongering surrounding our ever-changing and healthy climate has destroyed our natural and human environment, but I think you get the gist. In short, in the name of climate change, in the name of our environment, in an effort to burnish their elitist bona fides, these people have largely destroyed the very things that they claim to hold dear, with their policies and actions being responsible for spewing more carbon and pollutants into the atmosphere than our collective humanity could in hundreds of years. And that is why we must expose them for the frauds that they are. Charlatans who prove time and time again that they know nothing about the environment, climate, resource management, how to build strong, vibrant, and resilient communities, or human nature. But like so many dictators before them, believe that they are the experts who are entitled to micromanage our lives, mandate and restrict our mode of travel, control our food supply, and shove us into 15-minute cities and multifamily homes. Now, it is often easy to make fun of people like Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, Kamala Harris, Al Gore, John Kerry, and others, but these people have caused and will continue to cause real human suffering unless we stop them. And one tool that we have is to expose the true cost of their woke ideology. But it isn't just failed environmental policies that are to blame. We must also call out the entire DEI industry as being one of the many culprits resulting in the death and destruction that we have suffered. First, as I mentioned earlier, California's wildfire problem is largely man-made, with the homeless population and arsonists being responsible for well over 50% of all of the fires. All in the name of being equitable and inclusive, you see, personal and community responsibility are relics of the past when it comes to modern-day California. And nothing epitomizes that more than in allowing the homeless to literally run your cities into the ground and, when they so choose, to burn them down. Second, DEI is not only insidious because of what it means in practice, but in the fact that it allows politicians and bureaucrats to divert our precious resources from where they should be focused to pet projects that have nothing to do with carrying out the functions of government. The stories from California are legion, of millions of dollars being spent on DEI workshops and training, of hiring based on race, sex, sexual orientation, and intersectionality, rather than on whether the individual could physically do the job. And the outcome? Empty reservoirs, broken down fire trucks, air-sucking fire hydrants, no evacuation routes, and not enough firefighters. DEI is a disastrous concept in theory and wholly destructive in practice. It undermines faith in our institutions and allows unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats to redirect hundreds of billions of dollars into programs that we don't want, don't need, and that ultimately destroy everything that we hold dear. Fortunately, we now have a political leader in President Trump who understands how destructive these environmental policies have been to our communities and how insidious DEI policies are to our physical, mental, and financial well-being. Thank God, in other words, that we have finally awakened from this woke nightmare, and it is a new day in America. God bless CPAC, God bless President Trump, God bless our warriors who are fighting on behalf of all of us, and God bless America. Thank you very much.